Yes, good afternoon. This is today's second sessions, uh, under which block 4 we are going to cover, that is challenges to agricultural environmental health, under which there are different 4 5 units are there, that foodborne disease, food losses and waste, and genetically modified organism. These topics we are going to cover in these sessions. Myself, Dr. M. Shanmugam, Assistant Regional Director, Regional Center, Bangalore. So now let me go for this uh, presentation. My slide is visible now. Yes, audible. Can you see the slides? Participant. Hello. Yes, the program is MAEOH and the subject is agriculture and allied sector, under which block 4 challenges to agriculture and environmental health. So under which we are going to discuss about this foodborne diseases, food losses and waste, genetically modified organisms. So let me go for these introductions. The foodborne disease, objectives, overview of foodborne disease, and classification of foodborne disease, and food poisoning, and food infection, and types of the food. One minute. So the foodborne diseases we are going to cover: intoxication, what is infection, and toxico-infection, causes of foodborne illness. So foodborne diseases are defined by the World Health Organization as a disease of infectious or toxic nature caused by or thought to be caused by the consumption of food or water. Till date, more than 250 different foodborne diseases have been described. So the foodborne disease basically the human beings come in contact with either by the consumption of the food or the water they consume. So through which the contaminated, whether it bacteria or virus or fungus, whatever this organism, which will enter into the human body through the mode of this consumption, and it will create a health problem in human beings. So most of these diseases are infectious, caused by variety of bacteria. There are different type of bacteria which is cause a specific health problem for the human beings, and viruses and parasites that can be a foodborne. So other diseases are poisoning caused by harmful toxins or chemicals that have contaminated the food what we eat. For example, staphylococcus toxin that has formed in the food are poisoning the mushrooms. So the food be what we consume, if it is in a contaminated by this bacteria in one or other sources, that will take root into the human body where it causes the health problem. On the basis of mode of illness, these can be divided into three groups. That means the foodborne diseases can be divided into three groups, that is intoxication or poisoning, and second infection, and third is a toxic infection. These different disease have many different symptoms. See what happened after this, the poisoning of this food, after the consumption, when it enter the bodies, it will exhibit in the form of the symptoms. However, the microbe or toxins enters the body through the gastrointestinal tract and often causes the first symptoms there. So the in the way of exhibiting, say for example, nausea, vomiting, or abdominal cramps and diarrhea are the common symptoms in many foodborne diseases. Once we experience the food poisoning after the eating, after the consumption of the food, we may exhibit these kind of the symptoms of the food poisoning. The foodborne diseases are still a major public health concern all over the world. And today, there are responsible for many causes in case of adult illness and some death. But more importantly, the contaminated food is a source of the acute diarrhea disease that claim the lives of the enormous number of children every day. See, this what we call the food poisoning through the consumption or the water sources, where particularly in these developing countries where the sanitary facilities or these water drinking facilities or other sanitary conditions are not in a good proper order, where these incidents of this foodborne disease are more, where we can see the large number of the population affected. And in case of the diarrhea, it is a serious health problem which takes away the hundreds of the lives every day across the globe. Keeping this in view, this unit of this foodborne disease discuss the foodborne disease and their effect on the human health. Foodborne diseases are an important cause of morbidity and mortality. See, this foodborne disease, which in morbidity, that means a people may be affected, maybe not moving the properly, or activity they can take the activity routinely affected by this food poisoning, and also the mortality, the death also we can see after this food poisoning, and a significant impediment of socio-economic development worldwide. And this health problem create the socio-economic development in the many countries, because if the large number of the population affected because of that food poisoning, and this definitely affect the economy of the individual or economy of the population or an economy of the country affected largely, because the government or this institution need to spend lot of money not to make this give a good infrastructure with respect to the health providing system. The foodborne diseases are infectious or irritations of the gastrointestinal tract are caused by food beverages that contain harmful bacteria, parasite, virus, and chemicals, and so on. So that may be the food may be contaminated with various sources. That may be in a bacteria, or that may be in a parasites, which will be contaminated by the food, or it may be the virus or the chemicals also. The common symptoms of foodborne disease includes we can one can experience the food poisoning uh, by the way of the expressing the vomiting, diarrhea, or abdominal pain, or fever, or chillness. These are the common symptoms one can exhibit after the food poisoning. And most foodborne illness are acute, that means sudden expression of the symptoms, what we call acute symptoms, meaning they happen suddenly and last a short time. So whenever there is an acute infections happen, and there is a all of sudden expressions of this short time expression of the symptoms we can notice. In most people recover on their own without any treatment. Sometimes what will happen after this food poisoning, if it is a minor or if it's not a major, no, that this individual can recover without any major treatment. And rarely the foodborne illness may lead to the more serious complications, and usually that will be individual can get recovered for few in 1 or 2 days or few days. Foodborne diseases are a major public health problem. They result from the eating foods that contain a substance which are either infectious or toxic in nature. The classification of foodborne disease, we can classify this foodborne disease are usually on the basis of whatever the causes are them. Accordingly, they are divided into two broad categories. That means the food poisoning and food infections. Each of these categories are further subdivided into on the basis of different types of causative agents. See, majorly these foodborne diseases are mainly divided into the two types, that is food poisoning and food infection. Further, these based on the causative agent, these foodborne diseases are again they classified. And food poisoning can be from a chemical or biological sources. So the food poison, a food can no created a poison or becoming a poison for an individual, whether it may be contaminated with a chemical or biological sources. If you eat a food that can contains harmful chemicals or biological toxins that can poisons from the plant source or the animal source, or the microorganism which also cause in a it may be the bacteria or it may be virus or it may be fungus, whatever the biological organism which contaminate the food. That's also one of the reason the food can make us to a sick. And some common source of food poisons are caused by contaminated already in the food when the raw materials and harvested for the example. So some of the food materials at the production level or at the harvested level that may be contaminated with these type of chemicals or infected with some of the microorganisms or the bacteria or virus. The bacterial toxins produced by bacteria such as Clostridium botulinum and the Clostridium perfringens, which are the commonly found in the natural environment, example the soil. So these are the bacterial microbes, organism which are present in the soil that can cause in a problem in this food, and it subsequently causes the health effect in the human beings. And chemical toxins, example insecticides sprayed on the growing crops. See, as we studied already the previous other section, aquatic pollution are the pesticides or the insecticides which are used in the agricultural field in the crop in order to control the pest or in order to increase the food production. So these chemicals are again contaminated with the food, and that food we consume, then it creates a health problem in the human beings. That is called a chemical contamination of the food. Apart from that, the heavy metals. Heavy metals, example, lead and mercury. Particularly a fish caught near the chemical processing facilities. What will happen? The human beings, a lot of this, no, over the heating or taking the consumption of the fish in the larger quantities, where there is any these water bodies where the fish are catching or not, no, commercially, no, taking for this food consumption. These are happen to be contaminated with the chemicals which are nearby the factories are discharging the chemical waste into the ponds or the rivers or nearby. It will ultimately enter the oceans where these chemicals are contaminated. The fish are get accumulated these chemical, and in turn, when human consumptions are there, where it will create the problem. Certain toxic plant tissues, example, poisonous mushrooms. Some of the mushrooms which also have a toxic chemicals which cause in a poisoning for in the human beings. And toxic animal tissues is the poisoning of glands of certain fish and crabs. What happen? There are certain glands which are naturally present in the fish or the crab, which is proved or experimentally studied that having a poisonous no chemical which create then a health problem in the human beings after the consumption of those products. And chemical food poisoning can also occur if the foodstuff have been contact with the toxic chemicals and during the food production, processing, and storage and handling. See what will happen after the harvesting, the food are stored are processed and this handling. There are many stages before the food coming to the level of the consumption. There are many levels where the food products are exposed to the chemicals, because for longer duration preservation of the food requires some chemicals, otherwise that will be affected by this pest, or that food will be get damaged or the food will be lost, or we can't store in the long time. So these chemicals of the storage or the processing or handling the food products will also contaminated by these chemicals and cause a health problem after the consumption of this kind of the food. And the symptoms of food poisoning can range from mild headache to the severe flu-like symptoms. So sometimes these food poisoning will be the mild also like a simple mild headache also it will create, or a severe flu-like symptom also one can experience after the food poisoning. The most common signs and symptoms are, again, what we earlier noticed, the stomach cramps also may be there, and vomiting also there. Some of the chemicals which can create any as a symptoms. A person with a food poisoning may have any combination of these symptoms. Sometimes there may be both or will be there. There may be diarrhea, there may be cramps also, there may be fever also, chillness also. Any kind of the combined symptoms may also may be exhibited because of this exposure to the food poisoning. And depending on the causes or the agent involved, the illness may begin from 1 to 72 hours after eating the food. So depending upon this agent, what with the what kind of the poisonings happened, or what kind of the chemicals that affected the food, or what kind of the microorganisms which are present, depending upon that, the symptoms may be varied from 1 day to up to 3 days. After that, the symptoms one the individual can express. The food infection occurs as a result of indigestion of the pathogenic and microorganism with the food. Sometimes what will happen, this food poisoning is also created a indigestion because of the pathogenic microorganism which are present in the food. And indigested food microorganism multiply in the gut, and that can cause a disease like, again, the typhoid fever and cholera. So these are the some of the examples of the disease which can uh, create a health problem after the contaminated food to the individual. So intestinal parasites can cause a disease such as amoebiasis and also teniasis, that is staph diseases. So these diseases also will be created in the human beings after the consumption of this kind of the food poisoning. And genetic foodborne diseases, that is those that are transmitted to human from the other animals. So zoonosis means that is a disease which is transmitted from these animal source to the human beings, what we call zoonosis. And this from the, basically, if the source of the disease will be the animals, example anthrax, bovine tuberculosis, which are come from the animals to the human beings. And foodborne disease may be also be classified in the intoxication. Foodborne intoxications are caused due to naturally occurring toxins in some of foods, including lethalidism, beta-oxylaminoalanine, and also endemic acidities, that is pyrrolizidine and alkaloids. These are the some of the chemicals which are produced and which cause the uh, poisoning in the human beings. Due to toxins produced by certain bacteria, including Botulism, and due to toxins produced by some fungi, that is including, because some kind of the fungi which includes aflatoxin, ergot, and fusarium toxin. These are these fungi which cause the food poisoning, and after the consumption, it having its impact on the human beings. Due to toxins produced by some of algae, so algae, we notice that in the plant or in the rivers or the aquatic bodies, wherever we can notice that the algae growth will be there, where the planktonic diflorogilla and diatoms, which are the organism or plant organisms, are present over there, which also contaminate the food. Because what will happen, this will contaminate the aquatic organism. After the consumption of this aquatic, the body, it may be the crab or the fish, through which these chemicals enter the human body. And foodborne infections include bacterial infections such as salmonellosis, shigellosis, E. coli diarrhea, and the cholera, streptococcal infections, brucellosis, and listeriasis. So these are some of the bacteria which having a potential threat to cause uh, impact on the human health. And viral infections, such as we can notice the viral infection, which are also some source through the infection, that is viral gastroenteritis and hepatitis A, which are also the source of the contamination, which creates a problem in the uh, human beings. On the base of mode of illness, these can be arbitrarily divided into three groups: intoxication or poisoning, infection, and toxico-infections. Intoxication illness occurs as a consequence of ingesting or performed bacteria or mold toxin because of its growth in the food. What happens sometimes is fungus or the mold. What we can sometimes if we keep the food not properly stored, where the molds have a growth over there in the food. Some it not be we will not be noticed. It will not be visible in the naked eye. So if you consume those kind of the foods, that can cut it will create a toxic effect in the human body. A toxin has to be present in the contaminated food. So these sometimes these molds or this fungus or which are in the initial in the beginning stage where we will not able to find out this food are contaminated with the this kind of this no toxic agents or the biological agents. So if once we eat, then it will create the health problem in the human bodies. When the microorganism has grown and produced toxin in food, there is no need of viable cells during the consumption of the food for illness to occur. Staph food poisoning is an example for that. So infection illness occurs as a result of consumption of food and water contaminated with enteropathogenic bacteria or viruses. It is necessary that the cells of enteropathogenic bacteria and virus remain alive in the food or water during the consumptions. So these bacteria, these virus are alive when even we eat those the contaminated food, then it will enter the human bodies. The viable cells, even if present in the stomach, small numbers have the potential to establish and multiply in the digestive tract to cause the illness. So once these microbes or when enters into the no enters into the body organism where it will multiply in the digestive tract and cause the illness. And salmonellosis and hepatitis A are the example for this kind of these diseases. The toxico-infection, what is one kind of the that is infection which takes place. The illness occurs from the ingesting a large number of viable cells of some pathogenic bacteria. That means a small, minor quantity of this bacteria, if it is if ingested, no, through the contaminated food and water. So mainly these organism, these kind of microorganisms, are the potential having a creating a health problem, which may be entered through the always through the food or the water. Generally, the bacterial cells either sporulate or these release toxins to produce symptoms. And the Clostridium and Pharyngitis gastroenteritis is an example for this kind of and toxins which create the food poisoning. In addition to this pathogenic microorganism associated with the foodborne illness, some bacteria species and strains, some of the bacterial strains normally considered a non-pathogenic can cause gastroenteritis also, especially in the susceptible individuals. Some of these individuals are having a very much susceptible naturally or because of the malnutrition or they're not the no human the immunity having less power in some of the individual where this kind of this symptoms are the weakness after the exposing to this kind of this poisoning will takes place. They are designated as opportunistic pathogens. They are normally required to be alive and present the large number when consumed through the contaminated food. So some kind of the pathogens which are required to be which are alive or will multiply present the large quantity in the contaminated food. What we can notice, the majority of the foodborne illness is caused by harmful bacteria and viruses. Some parasites and chemicals also cause foodborne illness. Some harmful bacteria may already be the present in the food where they are purchased raw food including meat, poultry and fish and shellfish and eggs and unpasteurized milk. See, we'll notice that what we'll sometime we'll go and purchase the market, the people, the raw foods. It may be in a meat, what we the poultry or the fish even or shellfish because the storage is very very important. How the handling this very very important. How much duration they're having this this food they are maintaining in the room in a suitable or a clean environment, that makes the difference, because of there is a lot of always exposure to this kind of the product into the microorganism, where this food can get you know contaminated. And particularly the dairy products and fresh produce uh, often contaminate bacteria that cause a foodborne illness. The bacteria can contaminate a food, making it harmful to eat and any time during the growth. So harvesting, slaughter processing, storage and shipping. See, harvesting after the slaughter, because the animals which are slaughterhouse, where the premises or the place where the slaughtering happens, and should be in a maintained in a proper way or in a hygienic condition. Otherwise that area is a very prone to having a microorganisms, and that will, during after that this product will be get contaminated with these kind of this microorganism, even storage and shipping also, that will carry these microbes into the during transportation also. Food may also be contaminated with bacteria during the preparation in the restaurant or home kitchens. So even in the restaurant, not only in the where it's selling or this product, not only that place, even in the restaurants or where or the kitchen, where the homes where the preparing, if it is the food is not properly kept or properly maintained, or it will be chances are exposing to these microbes and invite and it will be get contaminated. If hot foods not kept in hot enough for or cold food not kept for cold enough, bacteria may multiply. See, certain foods should be kept in the hot environment so that the contamination of the food will be avoided. And also, some of the food require the cold storage, where the contamination by this microorganism will be eliminated or will be avoided. So that gives a protection for the food. That's why the proper storage or keeping in a hygienic conditions and a proper maintaining of the food is very very important in order to avoid the contamination by the bacteria or the virus. Otherwise it will not multiply there. Otherwise these bacteria get multiplied very quickly and food will spoil accordingly. So bacteria multiply more slowly when food is refrigerated. So bacteria multiply more slowly because they, if it is the environmental condition or the temperature plays a role in some of the food, the bacteria which will not multiply. Say, for example, some food which is kept in refrigerated and freezing food can further slow or even stop the spread of the bacteria. So that will prevent the contamination by this kind of the bacteria in the food. However, the bacteria in refrigerated or the frozen foods become active again when the food is brought to room temperature. Cooking food thoroughly kills the bacteria. So sometime what will happen after the storage, they will keep it in outside for the before cooking, and that time these bacteria which are residues are present where it can be again multiply, start multiply, and if it's not thoroughly cooked, this bacteria will be become a serious problem and creates health issues. Salmonella is found in many foods, including the raw and undercooked meat. See, if the meat or this the food, if it's not the, if it is contaminated by this kind of this bacteria, and if it is not cooked properly or undercooked, this it will become in a again it will a potential to create in a spread in a disease or cause a disease in the human being, particularly the meat or poultry or dairy products and seafood. And salmonella may also may present and eggshells and inside eggs, which will create in a problem. And Campylobacter jejuni is found in the raw or undercooked chicken and unpasteurized milk. Shigella spread from person to person. So these kind of the bacteria which can spread from the person to person. These bacteria are present in the tools of the people who are infected, and people who are infected do not wash their hands thoroughly after using the toilet, and they can contaminate food that are handled by are prepared by them. So what happened, that is why the sanitary systems are very very important, because the any people who are contaminated or infected with this kind of the bacteria or virus, if it happens to be uh, prepare the food, handling the food, those people are they were potential no spreader or contaminated the remain the rest of the food. So by which the food the spreading of this or food poisoning will happen. The water contaminated with infected tools can also contaminate produce in the field. Escherichia coli, we know that E. coli, which includes several different strains, among them only few cause illness in humans. Escherichia coli will be a very important parameter also to check with the water quality parameter whether it is contaminated by the waste or other things. Otherwise, this Escherichia coli will be grow more, and the strain is that cause the most severe illness. The common source of E. coli include the raw or undercooked hamburger and unpasteurized fruit juice and the milk, where this we can notice this kind of spreadness of this bacteria and virus present in the tools or vomitus of the people who are infected. So that is why the basic sanitary systems are very plays a very crucial role, because in the people where are the mass people are overcrowded people in the area, if any individuals or persons infected with this and they are vomiting, or the people who are infected this people who are infected with this virus may contaminate the food and drinks, especially if they do not wash their hands and they involve in the other activities. That means in handling the food, the food or the cooked food, wherever they working also, that food prepared by the person, infected person with a virus. No, so they become a sources for the contamination of this food, and shellfish from the contaminated water produce irritated with the contaminated water. Even this, the water contamination will also may happen because of this mode of this spreading of this bacteria. A common foodborne virus include norovirus, which cause inflammation of stomach and intestines. So the norovirus, which through its contamination, this kind of the symptoms one can experience. And hepatitis A, which cause inflammation of the liver uh, in the human beings. Parasites, Cryptosporidium, parvenum, and the Giardia intestinalis spread through the water contaminated with the stools of the people or animals who are infected. See, even these animals, some of the animals who are infected with this by kind of bacteria or virus, where these animals are exposed, again it will act as in a carrier or contaminate the food stuffs. And Trichinella spiralis, a type of roundworm parasite, and the people may infected with this parasite by consuming raw or undercooked pork or wild game. See, some of the worms which are present in the food, say for example the pork, where these worms are maybe present, and people who are eat this, suppose the food, uh, no, this parasite by consuming are undercooked. So the food is not properly cooked, and this worm get infected with the human beings and cause their problem. So coming to the molds are a microscopic fungi that can live on a plants or animals. So the molds in a moisturized place or where the temperatures are very low, or this very rainy places, this kind of the molds we can see. Notice the most molds spoil the food. Some form of toxin that can cause illness. So molds, what happen is spoil the food once it grows over the food stuffs or food. No, some of the toxin which is from these molds, it cause a illness. The molds can grow in a wide range of food. So, unlike the bacteria, mold can grow in food that are high acidic and low moisture. So, the low moisture area and high acid environment, these molds can grow. And freezing does not destroy these molds. And even if you freeze this kind of, freezing, the molds does not destroy it. Some molds cause allergic reactions and respiratory problem because of this molds, which creates an individual allergic and also a respiratory problem. And few molds in the right conditions produce mycotoxins or poison that can make you sick. So mycotoxin, which also been from these molds, which creates the poisoning of these foodstuffs. Mycotoxins are produced by certain molds found in primarily in the grain and nut crops, but are also known to be in a cereal, grape juice, and apple and other produce. However, not all the modes are the harmful. Even these modes, which are not the all the category, all the groups are harmful, but some of these modes, particularly the mycotoxins, which are the toxic to the human body. And chemicals hazards can be separated into three categories, where we come to the chemical contaminations of the foodstuffs or food poisoning that can be classified into naturally occurring chemicals and intentionally added chemicals and unintentionally or incidentally added chemicals. So what happened? Some of the whether this plant originated or the animal originated, some of the chemicals, the source from the animal product or the plant source, which became in a causing a chemical poisoning, and some of the chemicals which are intensely added to the foodstuffs in order to preserve for a longer duration. And some these chemicals may have created a potential health problem in the human beings, and some of these chemicals which are unintentionally or incidentally added to the chemicals. Chemical hazards are harmful chemical that cause illness, may contaminate food such as fish or shellfish, which may feed on algae that produce toxins, leading to high concentration of toxin in their bodies. So what happens? Some of the harmful chemical that causes the food, contaminate the food, such as the fish and shellfish, which may feed algae. See what happens? They feed algae or some other plant toxin which enter to the body of this fish or the shellfish. Then later on it will create a problem in the human being. Certain types of wild mushrooms also creating a toxin, produce a toxin that will be poisonous or that will be creating a health problem to the human beings. And unwashed fruits and vegetables that contain high concentration of the pesticides. As we know that in order to make the control the pest which will create a damage to the yield in the production of whether it may be the vegetables or the fruits, almost all are the, no, the in agriculture sector in the farm, where the pest will cause a major damage or major decrease the production or yield of the vegetables or the fruits. Otherwise the farmers will face the loss after the putting the so much work, or they landed into the loss. So in order to avoid those things, the people used to apply these pesticides or insecticides to control these pest. And these pesticide residues or the chemical residues which stay in this over the in the food, that means particularly the vegetables or the fruits, which after the consumption it enters the human body where it will causes the health problem. The symptoms of foodborne disease depend upon the causes. The common symptoms may already discuss. We notice what are the symptoms which will causes because of this food poisoning. The complication of the foodborne illness may lead to the dehydration, hemolytic uremic syndrome, and other complications. So even this complication also lead to dehydration in human beings. An acute foodborne illness may also lead to chronic or long-lasting health problems when the affected persons does not drink enough fluids to replace those that are lost through their vomiting and diarrhea, and dehydration can result. So what will happen if the dehydration takes place, or these if it is a person people affected by these chemicals or these poisoning, what is advisable is the individual need to go take lot of the fluids. Otherwise it will, what will happen, it will compensate the dehydrations, or it may be through it's happened through the and diarrhea or in vomiting also. So the drinking or replacing the water loss may be very crucial in order to maintain this loss in the body. When dehydrated, the body lacks enough fluid and electrolytes minerals in the salt, including sodium, potassium, and chloride, to function properly, infant, children, and other people. What will happen during the dehydration process? The body is lacks enough fluid because the body, because whether it may be the vomiting, continuous vomiting, or in diarrhea continuously 1 or 2 days, it will takes away the important minerals present in the salt, present in the body, that is the sodium or potassium. These are very important requirement in the body, or chloride is required for the proper functioning of this body. And because of this, minerals lost during this process of dehydration, and it will children, particularly in children and infants. That's why the compensation of the water is very, very important. And people with weak immune system have the greatest risk for becoming dehydrated. So that's why some people are immune systems are very weak, and they maybe it's not we can withstand these dehydrations and other uh, health problem they come across. And let me look the other unit, the food loss and the waste. Food loss and waste. Let me see the introduction and the objective and definitions and cause and types of food loss and waste. So as we know that food waste and loss is defined as decrease of food in different stages of the food chain intended for consumption by the humans. The food waste is start from the harvesting and the handling and storaging and processing and the transportations. So in the all these level stages, the food may be lost. So that is why the food waste or loss is defined as decrease of food in different stages of the food chain and intent, that is intent for the consumption. The issue of global food loss and waste has recently received much attention and has been given high visibility because uh, what will happen, we put law terms in a resource and natural resource, human resource, and money, and everything we put in order to uh, create produce a more food. But what will happen during this, until the stage of the consumption, this food are getting lost or wasted. That is a major concern to save or avoid this food loss, wastage. Otherwise, according to FAO 2011, almost one third of food produced for human consumption, approximately 1.3 billion tons per year, is either lost or wasted globally. See what happened. So this much quantity of the food, what we produced uh, for the human consumption, are getting wasted across the globe. So that is no very large quantity of the food are getting wasted during the transportation or the handling or the storage, whatever the stages. A lot of food wasted are lost from the supply chain, from initial stage, that is producing, till the last stage of the consumption in the household. So the wastage of the food products, whether the raw or the cooked, whatever they stay, from the beginning, from the harvesting to the consumption of the human consumption, in between, there we lost large, vast quantity of the food waste is happening. The current issues are a substantial proportion of food produced for is lost through the decreases quality and quantity. The eatable parts harvested are produced by the plants, animals, are consumed by the humans, but not ultimately consumed by the people, is called food loss. So the heatable parts are harvested from, no, it is intention to produce for the consumption. If it is wasted in between, what we call, no, the food loss. The food chain has many stages of food loss and waste. All stages are as follows. So what are the stages? If we look into the stages, wherever we there's happen to be loss at different stages, at the production level, that certain amount of the quantity of the food getting lost, wherever it is, whether agriculture product or the animal source product, whatever it is. And the storage and handling process, and the stage of storage and handling, where there's some quantity of the food get wasted. And packing and processing, not only that, during the packaging and processing of the food, where there's a certain amount of the food are getting lost, and distributed sending it to the market under consumption. So if you count, that may be a small quantity at the individual level at individual places, but you put it in a global level as a whole country, where if you calculate this amount of the food which are getting wasted, that will be gives a large number and big number of the wastage of the food. And poor harvesting equipment leads to the wastage of some grains. Food harvesting equipment, what happened? The harvest during the time of the harvesting of the food from the crop land, where certain because of not the proper equipment are used or the proper equipments are maintained for this process, there is also some loss of the grains which takes place in the harvesting stage itself. They fail to meet the quality and the standards. These are the waste taking place during the production. At the production stage, where the number of the this kind of the grains are getting wasted during the production level, or these of these grains or the food products. The fruit can be affected by pest. Apart from this last happening during the different stages, uh, the food also getting affected by the pest, fungus, and disease during the storage. So what happened? Even of the harvest, seasonal wise harvest, and it requires large quantity of storage of the food, because all the food which are harvested not immediately can be used or distributed to the general public, where we need to store this food for a longer time for storage. So during the period of the storage, these products are exposed to this pest. It may be a fungus, and also some of it is disease. That means that grains will be get wasted because of this attack of this micro other organism. Many foods will be lost during the handling, and food damage or spoiled during the packing, and due to the forecasting and factory process, foods may be lost or wasted. Even the factory processing of the food, the small quantity or reasonable quantity of the food are getting wasted. A food should be used before the expiry date, or else it will be wasted during the distributing or marketing. Not only that, even of the harvesting, preservation, and handling, and transportation, and packing, and even at the sale point, if the food is not no sold out, that the remaining, that means the reasonable time for which the food will be in a good condition, behind that the expiry is happened, and that food going to be waste. That's also come under this waste of this food waste. And food is purchased by the consumers, a restaurant, but it's not eaten by them. It could cause food loss during the consumption. Even in restaurant, if you calculate it, if you can see how much of the cooked food are in the wherever the functions or the wherever the things are happen, or in the hotels, a daily basis, a large quantity of the food are getting wasted. That's also makes an account of the food loss. To produce food, we need to lot of natural resource and also affect the environment. See, this food, what we see in the losses and the quantity of the losses across the globe, and but what we are, this production of the food requires a lot of natural resource. See, that means what? It requires water, it requires nutrients, it may be phosphate, potassium, nitrogen, or no, all these nutrients are required, all these environmental resources are required for the production of this food. It produces a greenhouse. And not only that, when you produce the food production, after the waste we saw in the earlier discussion, this organic manure or the waste created by this food harvesting or food residues, which become an organic matter after the conversion in the organic matter, that it creates in a producing a greenhouse gases. That greenhouse gas causes an environmental impact. So that means we are spending lot of the resource for the production of the food in one way. At the same time, during the production of the food, and we are it creates an environmental impact through the formation of greenhouse effect. And after all that, again the food what we are cultivating or harvesting, it going for waste. That is a matter of concern here. And if it is it, that's why this production of the food involves the production of greenhouse gases and releases the excessive nutrients. A rise of leads to the climatic change, which cause many biosphere problems, freshwater resource scarcity, increasing creating a pollution as well. So we notice that because of the usage of the fertilizers or uses of the pesticides, uses of these other chemicals, which are all leads to the other complications, other impact on the environment. That is means pollution of the different level. So after all spending so much concern, again the wastage of food happens means is a matter of uh, concern to look into. Due to agriculture and irrigation, huge amounts of water is being consumed, and mainly around the world. So the agriculture required a large and irrigation. No, otherwise we can't produce a required quantity of the agriculture product or the crop, because this crop and the agriculture products are very much required to meet the demand supply of the human population. And main problem caused by irrigation is water depletion and salinization. What happen? This any crop required a proper or required quantity of water resource, and again that is after that the consequent depletion of the nutrients will happen, salinization is happen, and fruit losses have a many negative impacts and reduce the economic value of the food chain. So it is the economic value of the food chain. The production of food which is ultimately not eaten, whether it is lost during the production or a transformation, the process or wasted at the time of consumption stages entitled waste of economic and natural resource. So whatever the stage the food are getting wasted, or whether it is in the immediately soon after the harvesting stage, or immediately after the in the during the storage stage, or it is the handling and the transportation stage, or it may be in the consumption before after the consumption the leftover things are whatever the stage, but it's all leads to what is a economic or natural uh, resource impact on that. These impacts could describe as three levels. So these impacts of the food loss, we can differentiate to three levels. At the level of household and individual enterprises, that is called micro level. This is called micro level loss of the food. It's happened. And at the level of production chain, that is called macro level. At the production level, this loss also may take place, what we call a macro level. At the more general level of the society, it's called macro, meso level and macro levels. Then we come to see the unit genetically modified organisms. So why the genetically modified organism that is required? Let me see this under this topic, the introduction on the objective. What is the objective of genetically modified organism? What are the genetically modified crops are there? Why it is required? See, we are putting effort to give or produce a more food, not to increase our crop yield, that ultimately fulfill our demand of the food and nutrition to supply for large number of this population. But same time, there is also a wastage of the food and the no and loss according to the economic burden on the society. So why these genetically modified organism or the plants or the microbes are required in order to aiming to produce required the quantity or required the quality of the food. People have been altering the genomes of plants or animals for many years using traditional breeding of techniques. Artificial selection for specific desired traits has resulted in variety of different organisms ranging from sweet corn to hairless lords. See, the technique what we use in the biotechnology, what the gene alteration, it may be applied to any plant or it may be applied to the any organism, it may microorganism or the animals, where we are to get desired product, the product we required. So if the genes are modified or these biotechnologies are implemented, where we can get the desired product. And in recent decades, however, the advance in the field of genetic engineering have been allowed to precise control over the genetic changes introduced into the organism. What will happen because of this genetic engineering? The genes can be modified. A gene can be introduced in a desired species where we required it or required in a the product or modifying in a product in order to enhance the production of the required things. We can modify the applying the genetic engineering, we can achieve that goal. Today we can incrop new genes from the one species in completely unrelated species through genetic engineering. So taking a one gene which is advantage or which is in a required or a dominant to produce in a introduce into a new species where we can get a more product out of that. The optimizing agriculture performance of facilitating the production of valuable pharmaceutical substances. Even that valuable pharmaceutical substance also can be obtained through this technique. And crop plants from farm animals and soil bacteria are some of the most more prominent example for organisms that are subject to genetic engineering. See, the crop, suppose there is a crop for which in which we require the more quantity in a small area where the genetically modification genes are introduced in the crop, that crop yield can be enhanced or increased because of genetic modification. That is not only applicable to the plants, that can be achievable in the plants, also in farm animals because of the meat production or egg production or whatever the so farm animals, the milk production. So where we can use this modified gene, we can get it more quantity. So and in order to achieve the more profit out of the crop or the animals we intend to do expect from particular source. And soil bacteria are also some of the more prominent example on this. Genetically modified organisms are those plant, animal, or microorganism in which a desired gene from a different organism has been inserted for improvement of certain traits. So, certain traits we want to have introduced in a new organism. This insertion of the gene we can apply and achieve their goal. For example, golden rice is an example for genetically modified crop. That is called golden rice, what we use, where the increased nutrition value of genetically modified crops are better to be tasted and have greater nutrients. Farmer can also grow more plants or food or less land with genetically modified crops. What happened for what is this now? The advantage of the genetically modified crops with a limited land resource or land, the farmer can get grow more plants or food in less land because of genetically modified crops. And genetically modified crops contain additional nutrients that are lacking in the commonly grown varieties. Even the nutrients aspect, what we require, that can be achieved through this genetically modified crop or the animal resource. An important example of genetically modified organism, multidisciplinary perspective, the challenges to agricultural and environmental health. 82 potential of this technology is the Golden Rice Project. Vitamin A deficiency is widespread in the developing world. A golden rice was developed to have an enhanced level of B carotene in order to prevent vitamin A deficiency. See, in a developing country, it is noticed that large quantity number of the people have a deficiency with vitamin A deficiency. In order to avoid or fulfill or to provide these A deficiency vitamins in the population, and this golden rice project has been taken and applied and introduced to produce more quantity of this rice which contain this vitamin A in the rice and increase crop yields. There is an expectation widely held by those in agriculture that genetically modified seeds will increase. Not only these certain kinds of the products or wheats or vegetable, even the seeds which are desirable to produce in a more economically important, and this engineering technology will be used. There is a statistically significant relationship between increased crop yields and increased adaptation of herbicide and pesticide tolerant crop seeds. So this genetically modified gene also can be implemented applicable to in a plant crop where the pesticide resistance variety can be produced. Because as we know that some of the crops are getting damaged or destroyed or lost in a vast quantity because of the pesticide. And these crops, if you made into converted into pesticide tolerant crop, that loss will be reduced, and in way, and the farmers can view no minimize the loss due to the pesticides. And it is also found that the crop yields significantly increase when the farmers adopted herbicide tolerant cotton and bee cotton. Bee cotton crops yield non-wheat carpet yields. So genetically modified crops, bee cotton, which reduce the which increase the tolerant capacity of the herbicide side and cotton, and it gives a more yield. And genetically modified organisms can be defined as organism that is the plants or animals or microorganism in which genetic material of DNA has been altered in a way that does not occur naturally. That means what? In a natural, in natural, whether it is the plants or animals, their genetic makeup is altered by this a new foreign genes, so which by which they increase the potentiality of this yield or the resistance whatever the desired target we required. The technology is called a genetic engineering, and food produced from the using GM modified organisms are often referred as GM food, that is called genetically modified food. One of the objectives of these developing plants based on genetically modified organism is to improve the crop protection. So what is our aim to protect the crop also possible through the genetically modified crop, and resistant to against the insects is achieved by the incorporating into the food plant the gene for toxin production from the bacterium bacillus through genesis. So where this gene will produce in a toxin which in turn affects this what we call the resistance to the insect, so the insect will not eat those plants. These toxins currently used as a conventional insecticide in agriculture and safe for human consumption. At the same time, and for human consumption, this will not be any problem for the human consumption and susceptible to a disease caused by such various resulting in higher crop yield. So, what will the ultimate goal for this modification to get higher yield crops? Disease transmission between the humans and animals. So, since the ancient time, the animals have a shared an area in the lives of human, whether it's a pets as a companion, a wildlife, or hunting, or as a food animals. So these are the animals or the pests in the farm associated with the human beings. So under this unit, we will discuss about the disease which transmission takes place between the human and animals. These animals, apart from providing a benefits to the people, are responsible for spreading many diseases. These diseases are known as zoonotic disease. The term zoonosis was coined in 1885 by the German physician Rudolf Virchow. The Joint Expert Committee of WHO and FAO 1959 defined the zoonosis as those diseases and infections which are naturally transmitted between the vertebrate animals and man. So some of the infectious diseases which are naturally transmitted between the animals and the man, and every year people fall sick due to the such diseases. More than 200 diseases are now recognized as zoonosis, and the list is still increasing due to the better diagnostic. So we come to know that there are many diseases, approximately 200 diseases, which they are animal origin, and it affect the humans through its various mode, even as in a pet animals or this the human body or the human beings which are come in contact with these animals. Animal interaction, and due to these interactions and changes brought about in the ecological system throughout the globe, and there is emergence in the emergence of the genetic diseases. Genetic diseases not only they constitute a major public health problem, but also prevent the efficient production of the food of animal origin besides hindering the international trade in animal products, thereby causing heavy economic losses. What will happen this because of these diseases, some of the diseases which are transmitted by this animals and which are contaminated in the food production, and this may leads to the economic loss when you come to the international trade, because any product which is contaminated by this no these microbes or this microorganism, naturally that cannot be transported to the others, and ultimately it leads the economic losses. Almost all the sections of the society are likely to be expected to different genetic disease. No, this because a human association with animals in one or other forms are regular, are inevitable. So that's why these people are experiencing different society or different places. These associations takes place, and this transmission of genetic disease also takes place. It may be agriculturalists or veterinarians or butchers or laboratory workers or hunters or many more occupational groups are at high risk of being affected by this disease. So we come to know that because the peoples are engaged with these animals at different level. See, in agricultural field, people are associated with this, these agriculture related animals, and veterinarians they also they exposure to these animals, and these laboratory workers they're testing these samples. They're also exposed to this kind of bacteria or the microorganism which are potential to create any disease, or even hunters also. The World Neurologist Day is celebrated in the 6th of July every year to create awareness among the public, to educate them preventive and control measures of exposures. This will deal with various aspects of important genetic diseases. Genetic disease can be classified various types, but the common base as follows. The basis of etiological agents, bacterial and viral, say example rabies, Japanese encephalitis, all these are related to the animals no, sources. Transmission of zoonosis. These zoonosis may be transmitted through the horizontal most common or vertical mode of the transmission. The entry of the pathogens may be through the various routes such as ingestion, say for example salmonellosis, and contact, that brucellosis, and inhalation, what called tuberculosis, and heterogenic tetanus or coitus. So these are the various mode of this organism which takes entry into the human body. And domestic animals harbor many infectious diseases in subclinical form. The role of domesticated animals that are live in the close association with the human dwelling, say for example the rats, rodents, mice, and badger, etc., having this close association with the human beings, which causes the this disease from the animal sources. And pulmonary bubonic plague is an excellent example wherein rodents act as source of reservoir for the plague bacilli. So the plague which also in a cause from the animal source, which cause in a problem for the human being. Other diseases such as leptospirosis, tularemia, rabies, Morin typhus, fever, etc. also rodents as an reservoirs. Among the most important wild vertebrates involved in zoonosis are rats and mice and monkeys. And wild mammals are also a role in a zoonosis, chiefly as reservoirs of the anthropoid infectious, and monkeys also may play a reservoir for the yellow fever and monkeypox and other viruses. So in these chapters, what we discussed about this, all three aspects of this, the challenges in agricultural and environmental health, in which we have discussed about the foodborne diseases, how the food and is affected, and food losses and waste, and genetically modified organisms, and also the disease which are originated from the animal resources. So these are the aspects we come cover under the block 4. So if you have any things we can discuss.